Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2021 and another session of our series. We just wanted to say hello from many different parts of the world today. I wanted, before we go into our speaker, to reintroduce you to our series because last time we had a bit of a technical issue, but we will have Takis coming back again next month. So the whole point of these events is to introduce the younger generation of scientists to alternative careers. We all know the clear academic path, but we wanted to take the opportunity to introduce you to experts that started as scientists. They obviously still remain in science, but they have followed alternative paths. And this is something a lot of us have been asking for a while. So we're very glad to be introducing you to this series for PhD students and ECRs. So I'm gonna give the lead to Vanessa, who is going to introduce you to our speaker for today. But please, meanwhile, as you're listening to the presentation, send us our questions so we can hopefully get the most out of our speaker. Bye for me from now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome from my side. Thank you, Irene, for introducing the initiative. And today it's really my pleasure to introduce you to Janka Mátrai, who is really at the pinnacle of her career in scientific regulation, which she has been involved in different aspects over the last 8 years. She's currently the scientific officer at the executive agency of the European Research Council. And for some of you who might be familiar with the whole grant writing process, she's really one of her tasks is really to manage the whole life cycle of those kinds of applications. She has a very strong research background, having done quite a few postdocs before transitioning to these regulation and policy roles. And today she will share with you her career journey. And before we start, we just have a few housekeeping rules that I would like to show you. So first, we would like to explain to you how to submit your questions. So you can send us your questions during the talk using the live chat window. In order to do this, you will need to sign into YouTube with either a YouTube or Google account and then join the channel. Please bear in mind that the live chat messages are not private. Everyone who tunes into the program can read them, so be mindful and respectful to all viewers who are on this event. Include your name and affiliation with your question. And as the main chair for this session, and Irene as well, we will ask the questions after the talk. So the sooner you ask your question, the more likely the speaker will have time to be able to answer them. And if you're not able to ask questions via the live chat, you can also email them to impact@esgct.eu. So without further ado, I welcome Janka Mátrai to give us her presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Irene and Vanessa, for this nice introduction and going through the housekeeping slide. And so thank you all who are here today attending this seminar on career opportunities in science administration, regulation, and policy making. I am Janka Mátrai, and I am a scientific officer at the executive agency of the European Research Council. And you can see in this photograph the building where usually I work, in the heart of Brussels. But of course now, as all of us, I am at home due to the corona lockdown. And so where do I come from? I am from Hungary, and I completed my studies in Budapest at the Technical University. And the building where I spent most of my time is shown by these photographs. It's just near the River Danube and near the bridge, which is called the Freedom Bridge. And during my master years, I had the opportunity to make my first steps in the world of scientific research in the group of Professor Tamás Veszprémi, and I conducted quantum chemical calculations on small molecules, as you can see here on this slide. And we tried to answer various questions using these methods on the structure, on the reaction mechanisms, and under other molecular features of these small molecules. But already during that time, I really had my interest into the direction of more complex and biologically more relevant structures and molecules. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get a scholarship, which was a bilateral scholarship between Hungary and Belgium at that time. And after defending my master thesis in 2000, I took Eurolines and I arrived to Belgium, first to Brussels and then by train to Leuven. And this beautiful medieval city hall is what you see immediately when you leave the central station in Leuven. And below that is the building where I worked, and it looks a bit less beautiful. Nevertheless, it was in a very nice park, and I was welcomed by a great group of people, great team, led by Professor Yves Engelborgs, Dr. Peter Krüger, and Professor Mark de Meyer. And just to give you one data on what is Leuven now in 2020. So they were awarded the European Capital of Innovation Prize. And it is really true that during these 20 years, since 2000, the city went through an enormous development, and you will see how it also affected the campus, the two campuses where I worked during my PhD and postdoc years. But going back to 2000, at that time, Hungary was not yet part of the EU. Hungary joined in 2004. We had no Skype, we had no Wizz Air, and we had no smartphones, which were for me the bad news, because I couldn't talk very easily with my friends and family being at home, and I couldn't travel that easily and at low cost as we could do it now before the lockdown came. But my scientific dreams came true, and I could work on larger structures, on enzymes, for example, doing molecular dynamic simulations and molecular modeling, molecular docking calculations. One of them being chymotrypsin is the gray structure, and we studied the activation mechanism of this enzyme. And another one was different invertases, molecules that break down sugar into glucose, sucrose into glucose and fructose. And we try to answer various questions related to the working mechanism and structure of these enzymes. A little bit of outlier was a third structure, which you can see at the bottom right corner of this panel of figures, or panel of structures, and that is an amylose tube, this green-red structure, and in the middle of this tube there is a chromophore that has properties relevant for nonlinear optical applications. And again, we were interested to understand how this structure is built, what are the main characteristics, mostly from the nonlinear optical applications point of view. So to be able to conduct these calculations and to get statistically relevant results, I had the opportunity to join the University of Alberta for 1 month and to set up calculations also there on a large computational grid, which remained accessible also after the 1 month from Leuven. And in 2005, I defended my thesis, and going a little bit further away from the campus into another direction, crossing a park, having this beautiful castle, and also a very nice hidden, secluded part of Leuven, which is a UNESCO protected a kind of architectural complex called the Beginhof. And these are 13th and 17th century buildings completely preserved and built and maintained by kind of semi-monastic nuns who live there to protect themselves and to live in semi-monastic and religious commitments. And crossing the park and crossing this Beginhof, you arrive walking or bike, doesn't matter. Leuven is not a very big city, and to the medical campus, which you can see here in the right lower corner, covered by snow. And so the medical campus was already quite large at that time, but during the years I worked there, 6-7 years, it grew even bigger. and took the name of this gentleman, who is Andreas Vesalius, or in his original name, Andries van Wezel, and this statue you can find on the island of Zakynthos. So why I put him here, I chose him not only because he's the one after which the research center I worked in was named at a later stage, but also because he is, as we know, the founding father of anatomy, but as well as, in my opinion, the founding father of life sciences research as we do now, which means that based on observation and based on evidence, he collected from the dead bodies, which he dissected, and these dead bodies were collected from the gallows. And these gallows were located, of course, outside of the city walls, as usually they are. But now, when I read about it, I realized that actually they were at the place where the current Vesalius Research Center is. So we are at the very spot where the gallows were and where Vesalius collected his study material, together with this partner in crime and friend of him, also a scholar from the lowlands, as Vesalius himself. Both came from the lowlands. Vesalius was born in Brussels and studied and worked in Leuven, and Gamma Frisius came from Dokkum, which is a city in the North Netherlands in Friesland, still exists, and it's a very nice, charming city. And so Gamma Frisius was actually the teacher of Vesalius, but they worked together. And so I didn't know anything about the gloomy history of the place where I arrived. So I had full hope and enthusiasm and motivation. I really wanted to continue my research direction more into life sciences and with clinical relevance. So I applied and I won a postdoc position in the team of Professor Marini Chua and Professor Thierry van den Driessen. And I worked on different gene delivery systems. One of which was integration competent and efficient lentiviral systems delivering the factor 9 gene, direct in vivo delivery into the liver, of course with relevance for hemophilia B. And this study was done in collaboration with groups from Italy, led by Luigi Naldini, and from Germany, led by Christoph von Kalle, and from United States by Tim Nichols. And from the team, later a talented PhD student joined the team, Nisha Nair, who is in the upper row, second from the right. The second construct or way of gene delivery, which I was working on together with the lead PhD student, Iayu Belai, next to Thierry in the first row, was the Sleeping Beauty 100 transposon transposase system. And this system was actually developed in Berlin in the Max Delbrück Research Center in the group of Professor Zsuzsanna Izsvák and Zoltán Irics, and with the lead postdoc of Lajos Mátés. And so we, together with them, they engineered this system, and we proved the concept that it is potent and actually a very robust gene delivery system. And we did in vitro and in vivo gene delivery, and so we could demonstrate also its relevance in, for example, Duchenne muscular dystrophy applications. And for this system, we won together with the team in Berlin the Molecule of the Year 2009 prize. And the third and final construct which I worked with, and together with also a very talented PhD student, Melvin Rincon, who is in the upper right corner in the first row. That was the AV9. Viral vector delivery system, and there is a nice little story about this virus, because the discovery that it is very cardiomyocyte specific was actually a serendipitous discovery. And when I joined the lab in 2006, this discovery happened, and I still remember the immense joy we had seeing the bright green cardiomyocytes under the microscope. And another, when I was reading a little bit back at the publications for this seminar, I discovered that actually the cardiomyocyte paper, which came out in 2015, is also co-authored by Takis, our next speaker in this series in February. So then spending 6-7 years, including my maternity leaves, being postdoc in the bioinformatics and then mostly in the gene therapy field, I really felt like I have many directions, and I am like a little bit on the differentiation landscape, or being the protein somehow lost in the folding landscape. And so into which direction to go? And I kind of broke it down into 3 main directions. And one of them, as we all know, is staying in academia. The second option is moving into industry. And finally, the third option was science policy, regulation and administration, about which I didn't know much more than being applicant myself for various grants and scholarships. I really tried all the 3. I didn't have a very clear idea at the beginning, and I wanted to see my chances and to see what are the advantages and the disadvantages of the different directions. So I knew if I want to stay in academia, I will have to leave Belgium, because my PhD and both my postdocs were done in this country. So to fulfill the mobility criteria and to be able to attract competitive grants, I had much better chances if I left Belgium. So I tried getting closer to my home country in Austria and Hungary. In both, I could actually succeed to get a position, again postdoc, but I just didn't see it anymore working out without real further career plans, and also the problem of having to relocate with my whole family, and for my husband to find a proper job which is at least was on the level of what he had in Belgium. It was also part of the equation. So putting all this together, I declined these offers. And I we made a decision to stay in Belgium. So I seriously started to apply to industry, as well as looking other opportunities outside of industry. And I sent about 50 applications, and one hit was actually before I left the lab already an offer, but I was due with my second child, I think 1 or 2 weeks. So I refused that offer. I just couldn't seriously think about it, being in that late stage of pregnancy. And then I had one more interview from these 50 applications, and that was in a 3D implant manufacturing company, which was very interesting for me. And actually, we had quite a good agreement. But then when it came to the salary negotiations, they said I'm just overqualified and I have too many years of experience. They cannot possibly pay me the amount I would deserve. So we couldn't agree. And so I continued to apply to industry. When came an advertisement of searching for postdoctoral researchers, grant holders, they call it, and scientific officers in the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. I never heard of it before, so I had to read about what was it. And I started to work there at the end. I succeeded with the job interview, and I will explain you in the next slide exactly how I applied and what was it all about. And it was a 3-year contract, after which I moved to the European Research Council, and this transition I will explain to you as well in the next slide. So happy all worked out here. And so let's go into the details. So what is the Joint Research Center? The Joint Research Center is an in-house scientific body of the European Commission. It's not a bottom-up research facility. It's more a top-down, as we can call it, because we fulfill scientific research in order to serve the policies, regulations, and different directives of the European Commission. We are an independent Directorate General. Of course, we belong to the European Commission, but we are a standalone Directorate General, as many other Directorate Generals of the Commission. The headquarters of JRC are in Brussels, but there are several other facilities of this joint research center all over in Europe, one in Belgium, in the city of Geel, another one in Netherlands, in Germany, in Spain, and in North Italy. And the whole idea is that the different centers are united under this JRC services, but each one of them has a bit of different portfolio and service a service portfolio. So there are different people working at JRC, and also depending on in which facility you are working and whether in the headquarters or one of the research facilities. So I was a grant holder, a postdoctoral scientist. That was a mixed position, being one leg in the European Commission and another leg still governed by the Belgian employment law. And at the same time of being a grant holder, I had also a scientific officer profile, and I will explain this a little bit in more details. And I worked in the Standard for Innovation and Sustainable Development unit, where we produced different standards, as the name says it, and the calibration materials. I developed DNA-based calibration materials, and also we wrote publications. So it was really a mixed position, really in between policy making and scientific top-down research. And so, for example, this is one of the publications that came out from that time, and this is one of the products we produced there. This is a calibration set with different concentrations of DNA. And this is used as a calibrant for detecting ruminant origin contamination in animal food and feed. Why is it important? If you remember, there was the breakout of the mad cow disease, the BSE, bovine spongiform encephalopathy disease, and that was quite a breakout. Many animals had to be slaughtered in order to avoid the further spread of the epidemic. And since then, it is forbidden to have animal origin content in animal food and feed. So we need to test, and these tests are done regularly as part of the BSE surveillance system in Europe. Every national laboratory does these measurements to check if there is no contamination in this animal food and feed product. Due to this surveillance system, the BSE cases dropped. Sporadically, we still have here and there reports of occurrence, but not in comparable size as it was during the breakout. And so our standard or our calibrant we produced is important, because in this way we can ensure the harmonization of the different measurements done in the different countries of Europe. So, and of course, related reports and publications for all these products are available, and these all publicly available. So you can see on this figure that you can actually buy this product, and there is a price tag for it on the website of JRC. As compared to that, ERC is a whole different world. It gives you again, it leads you back into the top scientific world and the bottom up research and excellent science area. And it is also structurally different from the Joint Research Center. It is an agency with a specific mandate. And as you know it, the mandate is that we give through calls and evaluation procedures, money to single PI-led scientific projects of any kind. The sole criterion is scientific excellence. And the ERC is not a DG, so it's not a Directorate General of the European Commission, but it is linked to and works together with the Research and Innovation Directorate General. It has one venue, and this is the headquarters in Brussels, in what you have seen in the first slide. And here I am a contract agent. And is also a scientific officer. So, but now I am like more the other side of the table. I am not the scientist who meets the scientific officers in Brussels, delivering the scientific data as we have done it at the JRC. I am not the officer who manages the different projects and meets the scientists and either as applicants or via conferences, going on missions or visiting labs, or via the scientific council we have at the ERC. Now, the ERC as such has its executive agency, and I am working in the executive agency, but we are completely merged together. So, for example, I can just meet the scientific council members in the elevator. So it is just more an organizational and division along the functions we execute, rather than a physical separation of the different parts of the European Research Council. And I work in the Life Sciences unit, which is of course dictated by my scientific background, and in two teams, or we call it panels, the LS2, which is bioinformatics, and LS5, which is neuroscience. And so the outputs here, what we have is again different. We do have still editorials, for example, this one, and we provide as scientific officers massive amount of data that is behind these articles. We do yearly exercises estimating and measuring the science behind the projects, which means we evaluate those projects which were funded and we see what they delivered. And so if we publish a summary of this in every framework program, the last one being FP7, and then we are now working on it to have the same data published for the just completed Horizon 2020 framework program. And of course, we have a lot of reach out videos and other communication products by which we want to engage the society. We want to engage with the scientists, and so we target all our audiences. And just to show you how the Joint Research Center and the European Research Center are located in the new framework program, which is the Horizon Europe. And this is the Science and Innovation Financial Support Framework Program from 2021 for 7 years. As you can see, I'm sorry, the yellow cycle moved. So it has to be not on the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, but on the European Research Council. But it's in the excellent science pillar. And the Joint Research Center is in the second pillar called Global Challenges and European Industrial Competitiveness. And so they are all, both of them, part of the Science and Research and Innovation Framework Program and Support Program, but occupying two different pillars. The third pillar being the Innovative Europe pillar, and there you have the new European Innovation Council, the European Innovation Ecosystems, and the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, which is also in Budapest. And very importantly, I would like to draw your attention to the widening participation and strengthening the European research area. So these programs are overarching programs, and that's why they are indicated in this way. And for example, me, myself as well, as a scientific officer, I participate in actions to increase the inclusion and the participation of, for example, the EU 13 countries, which are the East Bloc countries, and some additional other countries, because we see that their participation, for example, in ERC calls is much less and the success rate is also much less. So we try to find out what are the reasons behind and what we can do to close this gap. And so after giving you some information and idea about the differences between JRC and ERC, I would like to also give you some idea about the similarities. So I was in a special position as a postdoctoral scientist grant holder at the JRC. I'm not even sure that it exists any longer. I think now they harmonized it across the whole commission. And you have 4 possible permanent positions, which are not immediately permanent nevertheless. So I'm a contract agent, I had to wait, I believe 3 years to get my contract permanent. Then you can be a temporary agent, and you can be an assistant, or you can be an administrator, assistant abbreviated with EST, and administrator with AD. All these positions to achieve that you are selected or invited to one of these positions, you have to participate in the so-called APSO competitions, or as they like to call it in Brussels, concours. So it means that it's not enough to go, you will not be invited to an interview if you are not placed on one of these lists, successfully completing one of these competitions. So while I was at the JRC, being just a grant holder, I went to the contract agent competition and I completed it. So I was on the list and I was waiting. And at one point they called me because there was an opening in the executive agency of the European Research Council. So they called me for an interview, and that's how I could secure my next step after finishing my 3 years contract at the JRC. There are language requirements if you want to make your position permanent, meaning that you have to speak 3 of the European languages and have a proven proficiency. Your mother tongue, if you have a European mother tongue, counts. So my first language is Hungarian. Then the language of command in the ERC is English, and you are free to choose any other European languages. And so you have to have these 3 languages before your position can be made permanent. When you apply to JRC or to ERC, you have to have a scientific profile, even though especially at the European Research Council Executive Agency, you will be doing administrative work. I couldn't have applied if I don't have publications, and they really checked the publications. So it was decided, the strength of a CV depended on how many publications you had. And of course, it's very important also because you will be involved in the evaluation process of these proposals. So they try to orient you and put you in units which overlap with your scientific background. And in both places, there are horizontal activities. This I mentioned already in the previous slide, and they are extremely valuable. These are the activities with which you can actually contact outside of your strict working environment, more in the vertical direction with any colleagues. So I was involved in the grant holder association at the JRC, dealing with the top managers of the institute, even with the director herself, for various issues that we wanted to improve for the grant holders in JRC. At the ERC, I am a member of the newcomers team. We gave trainings for the newcomers, and I am a very enthusiastic member of the widening participation horizontal activity group, because I do believe that we can do a lot to to increase the success rate and participation of those countries which now lag behind. And finally, I would like to highlight that on both places you have a massive possibilities for personal development. Working hours and the working environment is extremely flexible. Even it was like that before the Corona lockdown. Both places I went to conference visits and lab visits to stay in tune with what's going on outside in the community. I enjoyed the freedom to participate on my own initiative. For example, I went to the Pint of Science, which is a kind of science festival involving the public, and in this way working towards increased public engagement, increasing public engagement. And you have always the opportunity to change your position, to participate in other competitions. For example, I participated in a temporary agent competition, and this is a multi-step APSO competition. I reached the final state, on which finally I was not selected. So it's sometimes nerve-wracking because it takes several months to go through the steps of this. But I had colleagues who went to another DG or another agency, who went back to industry, who even went back to academics, because I didn't mention here because it's not a permanent post, but we have seconded national experts who leave their country for a certain period of time and then they return back to their country, and often they return to the scientific research world. But I had also colleagues who were not nationals, seconded national experts, and they just returned into the previous field of work, research, etc. And so this slide is heavy, but I wanted to include as much as possible information because it will be available for you. And so we have a huge amount of information about our programs, both if you are an applicant as well as if you want to work with us on ERC on YouTube for both ERC as well as JRC. We have new videos on how to apply if you want to be an applicant. These are called ERC classes. And we have the other channels, the usual social media ones, and the websites, both for ERC and JRC. And finally, for those who you think of working in the science administration and related fields, you can find about the competitions on the APSO website. Or if you are more specifically interested to be a contract agent, then on the CAS website, which is actually available also from the APSO website. And there is an EU training offering you various possibilities to train for these competitions. I never participated in EU trainings, but I have used massively the books, and they are very important because these competitions are not easy, not in terms of how difficult the mathematical problem you have to solve or the analysis of the text that you are receiving. They are usually easy text and easy mathematical problems, but the time you have to solve them is extremely limited. So you have to be almost like a robot, and you can reach this automated kind of state only if you practice. And finally, I put 3 more websites: Science Business, Innovation Place, and from a blog from Daniel Spichtinger. They are just very nice sources of information if you want to know all the details about how the decision makings, for example, about budget, the current budget negotiation go, or other decisions like we had the Brexit now, how this would influence the research area in Europe and the relation to United Kingdom. So all these questions and break it down to the numerical details you can find on this website. And so with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. And this slide is just really my huge thank you for all the people who I was extremely lucky along this career path to work with in Budapest, in Leuven, as I call it Leuven 1, because that was my PhD lab, and with the Edmonton team for the 1 month, and then Leuven 2 for the gene therapy, which team after that moved to Brussels. And finally, for JRC and ERC, I started to count the people, but at 50, I said it's just way too much and way too many. And so I just put 2 YouTube links here, which are short videos about 1.5 minutes and give you a nice piece of information about the newest achievements. They are recent. The JRC is about a rare disease platform, which was made in 2019, and I think it's a very nice initiative. And finally, the ERC, which is this YouTube video is just released the beginning of the year, so it's extremely recent and just gives you a nice 1 minute piece of information about our mission statement. And finally, if you have any questions, please never hesitate to contact me. My email address is just there in the right below corner of the slide. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open, open to your questions.
Thank you, Janka, for a very comprehensive presentation chronicling your journey from a PhD student all the way to your current role at the ERC, and also to show us a little bit about the beautiful European landscape and some history as well. So my first question to you is, since you said that you basically chose this regulatory path because you had already completed 7 years of a postdoc, do you feel like you were backed into that corner, or do you feel fulfilled that at this point you feel like this was the right decision that you made in order to be able to be where you are now?
Yes, so it was a very conscious decision, and I knew if I really wanted to pursue academic career, I could leave Belgium and I could start somewhere. I had confirmation on this by succeeding in 2 interviews in 2 different countries. But I really asked myself if I really want to do that, having 2 small children, having my husband work here in Belgium, and none of us are from Belgium, so we both would have had to start from scratch wherever we moved. And putting all these parameters together, family, personal reasons, job security, every little detail, I decided like that. I would like to emphasize that this was really my personal decision. And so I completely understand if any other person would have made a different choice in my case. But for me, being able to maintain our life in Belgium and being able to work at the Joint Research Center was an excellent possibility. I truly enjoyed my work there. I enjoyed this combination of being in the lab and at the same time already meeting officers from Brussels, and to see how this really works, how we can communicate with each other, how differently people might think at the other side of the table. So that was very new for me and very inspirational. So I didn't think for me from the personal development point of view that it was a compromise and that I did it because I was cornered. Obviously, in Belgium, if you look at it from strictly from the research point of view, yes, the sources became limited. But that's the nature of the situation, or the nature of the beast as we know it. So it's you who have to decide what you really want.
Yes, that's true. So before I continue, I would just like to invite everyone who is tuned into the live right now that you can also post your questions in the live chat so that we can ask Janka live on air so you can get your questions answered. So Janka, I wanted to also ask you, now that you're a contract agent, is there more room for vertical growth or career progression from this point within the ERC?
Yes. So, for example, after 4 years, I was promoted. This means that I am still a contract agent, but a grade higher. If I really want to grow, I do have to participate in the competitions. So it's not possible to jump from a contract agent position to a completely different position without being successful in, for example, a temporary agent competition or an administrator competition, because these lists, as they are made, are independent from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot transition from one to another without being successful in the competitions.
Right.
It's not easy, but you can do it. I do know people, I do have colleagues who have done it. I managed to reach till the last cycle. Okay, I failed in the last cycle, but that's how life is. So I will try again. So it's and I know people who left into another agency or into another regulatory body, and then they returned a couple of years later into another position. So it's not rigid, but it's competitive. So
Okay.
it is not that you wake up in the morning, oh, I prefer to do that, and then easy busy, and you will have it. It doesn't work that way.
Right. But so then my follow-up question to that is, for you to, apart from the resources which you have mentioned in your presentation, are you able, does the ERC offer additional training courses for you to be able to gain proficiency in skills that you might need in order to participate successfully in these competitions?
Yes, actually massively. I think if I can I say this publicly, for me, after academia, I felt we are spoiled. So you, for example, the language requirements, you have language courses within your working hours. So you don't
Oh,
have to allocate extra working hours or from your private time to follow language courses, because it's just there. There is an in-house language center in another building in Brussels, and you select which 2 hours twice a week is what is comfortable for you, and you go there, and it's covered with your working hours.
okay.
So, and all other trainings, really a huge list.
Okay. So just one final follow-up question before Irini takes over. How would you describe the research environment in the ERC or JRC compared to academia? Because most people, I'm sure even before getting onto this call, thought that these organizations were strictly administrative, but you've described either the top-down or bottom-up type of benchwork science that is actually done. So how does that differ from academic science?
Yes. So already when I worked in the gene therapy lab, I had a chance to work also with industry, with pharma. So I had an idea also how labs look outside of academia. And of course, you have also that large diversity within academia, depending on where you are, etc. As I had no idea when I applied to the grant holder position at the JRC exactly what to expect. And I have to say it was an absolutely positive surprise, because we had the state-of-the-art instruments, sequencers and PCRs like digital PCR or droplet PCR, which I don't never heard of before, or if I heard, we always had to ask a collaborator or go to a big center to queue and have our products sequenced. So everything was in-house. Also in the other facilities, like many people don't know, but in the JRC in Yale there is a linear accelerator for nuclear research, which is completely unique in the world. So and it's located in a little forest in Belgium. So for me, at the JRC, the facilities were just top and excellent. Now, ERC is a completely different thing. It's an administrative job, and I don't enter labs as a scientist, I do have access to labs through missions when we reach out to our grantees and we visit them in our laboratories, and we kind of engage into the public relation with them and managing the contact with these scientists. So in this way, I gain insight, but I'm not functioning anymore as a scientist. I am completely on the other side of the table. Um, I like to call our job at the JRC like we are not the football players, but the referees. So you participate in the game, but you don't play it as the football player plays it.
Well said. Irini?
Yes, I personally cannot thank you enough for putting so much effort into this presentation. Like, thank you so much for redesigning your slides for this initiative. And also on a personal note, I'd like to thank you for really keeping it real, because I think especially when we are younger, it's kind of like, how do I say it? We forget about the real life scenarios, like having a family or the opportunities you might have or you might not have, depending on, you know, your nationality, whether that is funding or whether that is just like being able to move around. So I'm very grateful for sharing that personal journey with everything that was around, and not just, oh, job 1, job 2, job 3. So yes, thank you so much for this. I'd
Thank
like
you.
to start with some questions that people have shared with us. So from Ana Garcia, she's asking you, she's wondering how necessary the postdoc experience would be to join the ERC or the JRC. And she's specifically asking whether a PhD with a few publications would be enough to compete with other applicants, or a postdoc and more publications you think would be necessary.
Yes. So it's a very good question, and I can give a yes and a no answer to it. Uh, um, it's not important necessary to have an extensive postdoc experience, and I even have colleagues who I think have 0 year of postdoc experience. They immediately change after PhD, um, because that's how the program is set up. Nevertheless, I see that I have knowledge and a hand-on experience which my younger colleagues who left science earlier um, don't necessarily have. And this gives me a very
Mhm.
stable footing in what I am doing. So I don't have any problems understanding what's written behind the lines or in between the lines when I'm reading a report, because I know
Right.
how these reports are written. I know how science is done in between, sometimes soup and potato in the labs, day and night. It's just you cannot learn this without doing it. So this gives
So it's
me
like the insight, like that
exactly.
you've gotten through this experience. Like, yeah, okay,
Of course it's a personal one, but might be important to consider when you decide on your next step in career. I am extremely happy that I could be a part of this journey. So it gives me a fulfillment that I took something out of it and didn't leave it there right after the PhD. It was not easy. I'm not saying that. So we all know how it is. I know the 14
someone who
hours.
is doing a postdoc now.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. The 14 hours of experiments and including weekend. So, but it's like being a little bit like a vagabond. You you enjoy it as well at the same time, right? So it's not something that maybe you want to do forever and ever till the end of your life, but nevertheless, it's an experience which I am extremely happy that I could have. And so I
Right,
think
okay.
these are the things at least I suggest to consider.
So I guess from your perspective, it's not just like the in-paper qualification, but you think that it was beneficial for you to go through this and experience this, so that, okay,
Definitely. Yes.
okay. Okay, so we hope that answers your question, Anna. So from Ochulor, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Sorry if I'm not, but the question is that what options are available to non-Europeans if they're interested in joining like the ERC or maybe like other regulatory bodies as well?
So that's a very good question. Joining the ERC, so first of all, there are associated countries, and there is not a problem. So we had also, for example, a colleague at the JRC from North Macedonia. Then we had, if coming outside of Europe, Europe really is difficult because you have to have a European citizenship. So that's one thing. If you are, on the other hand, and now I'm talking about ERC, an applicant, that's a different story. So I'm not sure how the person who has the question wanted to ask from the point of view of working in the executive agency of the European Research Council or being an applicant for a grant.
So they're saying in joining the ERC, so
Joining,
I'm
so
not sure.
working there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So then you need to be a European citizen. Yes, or coming from
Okay.
an associated country. Yes.
Right. So then we would say that, yeah, it's more like a European sort of like addressing
Yes.
job opportunity.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying this. And again, see, this is, I think, is important because again, there is these real life scenarios which sometimes, you know, they might be facilitating, but they might also be limiting depending on the situation. So yeah, I think, yeah, that was a good question. So the next question is from Eva. If you could suggest some other like regulatory bodies within Europe or generally like that you think would be welcoming to younger scientists.
Okay. So there are several agencies across Europe, in practically speaking, I think all countries, which if you type in Google agencies of the European Commission, you will just receive a page and all of them will be listed. And of course, there are several other councils and institutes, like, for example, the escapes my mind the proper name, like this Advanced Medicinal Agency, something like this. I'm not sure or Advanced Therapeutic Agency. I will look. No, innovative. IMI. Innovative Medicine Institute. So these are other bodies which are somehow in this network, and you can join them. But I don't know exactly now how they exactly work. So I would need to go to the website of these institutes and check them. What I suggest is really to Google it and start to look one by one, because just because they are agencies, they are not necessarily working according to the same rules and regulations.
Right. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'd like to ask one last question to wrap up this session. And that would be, I don't know if we're biased because we are now go through this kind of like post-PhD or postdoc, but I feel a lot of my friends and myself included, we a lot of the times feel a bit limited in, or actually we find it a bit challenging to do this jump, you know, leaving academia and changing, whether like there's people that might be confused obviously, but then there's also people that do know what they want, and that might be a career like yours in the regulatory affairs or a career in the industry, but that initial step, that like jump, seems to be quite challenging. What, and by from the sounds of it, like from your experience, you had to take a lot of things into consideration, and also you were kind of blocked. You said that you sent like 50 applications into the industry. So I guess my question is, what advice would you give to someone who is like experiencing this right now? They might be failing in their applications, and then along these lines, what do you think are the differences for people experiencing this right now versus when you were experiencing it, because it also does feel like the market is a bit saturated at the moment. There's way more people doing PhDs or postdocs, and I feel like once upon a time it was having a master's degree, then it was okay having a PhD. Now it feels like even having a postdoc is, you know, borderline not enough. So yeah.
Yes. First of all, I acknowledge that the competition is fierce. So what you feel is real, I think. The market is saturated in a certain way because there are many people, as you said, PhDs almost became a standard. I fully agree with you. At the same time, there are plenty of opportunities as well. So it is really just this huge amount of information and huge amount of people, and everything is super fast and super saturated, and it's just this frustration that you don't know what and how many and when and all the pressure of it. So looking back, of course, it's the bright side is somehow always the high side, right? So you see it much clearer once you are behind and out of it. But exactly this also gives the, I would like to give as a message that you will reach that state. You don't, I don't know anyone who gets stuck and reached nowhere. Even I had colleagues who were searching a position for 1 year. Eventually, they ended up at a very nice place. So it sometimes is the question of time, and that is what is nerve wracking.
Persevering, like.
Exactly, because one refusal after the other, you feel devalued. You don't know anymore what your own worth is. So just keep on walking. You will reach there. I know it sometimes seems hopeless and extremely difficult, but you will eventually get there. And for me, I at the point when I had to really decide, I could really also imagine to work in industry. I didn't have this really clear-cut vision that okay, and now I close the doors on academia and industry, and I am just interested to go in director regulation. I wanted to do something useful and interesting for me, for the society, with all what I have learned till then. And when I arrived to the JRC, I just said like, okay, this is actually better than what I expected. So, or even expected is a wrong word, what I knew on beforehand. So, and you can decide it for yourself after that. I had colleagues from JRC who went back to industry. So it's not it's not one directional.
Right. Yeah. I think, yeah, I hope that these words will help the people out there that are in that situation. And I'm fairly sure that it's a lot. It's a lot of people feeling like this. And I mean, it also makes sense, right? I totally agree with what you're saying. Kind of like when you're out of it, you can see more clearly, but when you're through it,
Yes.
it can feel so challenging. It can, you know, from doubting yourself to being angry with the system to like, you know, a plethora of feelings, and definitely frustration and worry about the future. And I mean, I think it's also important to acknowledge that the times we're going through right now are not you know, are not ideal, so that also contributes. But I think it is important for everyone to see that, I guess, there is always light in the end of the tunnel, but most importantly that there is no stopping. You have to keep going. And yeah, and even when you are in a position like you're saying, some of your colleagues went back to the industry or they changed, you know, there's never there is a lot of dynamics into it.
Yes, and just to close, maybe I would like to give two brief comments. One is that is important, I think, that you always know what makes you happy in that what you are doing. What is your pleasure in it? What you want? What you self-development. That's one thing. And the second thing, and I will finish. It's important sometimes which people you meet, and maybe not sometimes,
Mhm.
but quite often. So just because you feel like a failure in certain setting or in a certain group of people, just change the group. So
Yes,
I mean, if you look at
wonderful.
the story of behind the vaccine we have now, the researcher, the lady, Katalin Carico, I mean, what she went through is also quite, I mean, hard. And at the end, she pulled it through. Of course, I hope that not every one of us will have to go that what she, but that's a good example, I think.
Right.
So,
Yes. Yes.
okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very
Thank
much.
you. Again, thank you for taking the time to make this presentation and really dedicate the time so that it fits to the person of this initiative. I would just like to take the opportunity to introduce our next speaker. We will keep going. We will attempt for this to be kind of like a monthly thing. So next time we will have Takis. We will try again, hopefully with internet connection this time. But like I said, everything should be better in 2021. So hopefully that will also happen. And I think there's like a few more questions, please. Janka, can you maybe just repeat your email address if people want to reach out with some more questions?
You mean saying it
Your
out loud?
email address,
Yes,
just
okay.
like,
So it's my name, Janka.Mátrai at and ec.europa, so with an a, .eu.
okay, perfect. So
Share your
if you have
website.
any more questions, yeah.
Please, yeah, the questions are always welcome.
Perfect. That was wonderful. Thank you again for your time. Guys, we will see you again next month. We will advertise the event. Please follow us on the social media so that you keep updated. This is a series of events for PhD students, postdocs, early career researchers. So we will try our best to kind of like accommodate your needs. Please send us your questions, or if you have any suggestions about future events, and we will see you again next month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Bye.
joining. Bye.
Bye.